A very good evening to all pious yogis. I hope all yogis have been striving diligently to develop constant and continuous mindfulness throughout the day. This evening, we shall discuss the discourse given to householder Haliddakani. Some of the teachings given in this discourse are relevant to the practice of mindfulness meditation, vipassana meditation. So part of this course, which is relevant to the practice of mindfulness, is about roaming in a home or roaming about homeless. And the other part of the teaching is about roaming about in an abode or roaming about without an abode. So here I shall quote the form element householder Haliddakani is the home of consciousness, one whose consciousness is shackled by lust. Lust means raga. For the form element is called one who roams about in a home. Similarly, the feeling elements is the home of consciousness. The perception elements is the home of consciousness. The volitional formation element is the home of consciousness. So one whose consciousness is shackled by lust, raga, for this feeling or perception or volitional formation element is called one who roams about in a home. This discourse is found in the Khanda Samyutta, the book of the aggregates. So instead of saying the aggregate of form rupa khanda, but in this discourse, instead of using khanda, elements is used. So it's rupa dhatu instead of rupa khanda. So the feeling element here is vedana dhatu, perception element is sanya dhatu, original formation elements is a sankara dhatu. But here, the consciousness elements is not mentioned. So we shall explain further based on this discourse. So as you know, there are 5 aggregates, or in this sutta, there are 5 elements: the form, the feeling, or the perception, volitional formations, and consciousness. In this discourse, the discourse says that the form element is a home of consciousness. Similarly, the other 3 elements are the home of consciousness. So do you understand from this discourse that the 4 elements are the home of the consciousness? The discourse is explained about conditionality, paccaya. So at the beginning of mindfulness meditations, meditators may not be able to perceive the consciousness clearly. So these 5 aggregates or 5 elements in this discourse are the object of mindfulness meditation, vipassana meditation. So meditators have to begin the practice mindfulness with a clear object or conspicuous phenomenons. In brief, the 5 aggregates constitute nama and rupa, mental phenomena and physical phenomena. Mental phenomena consists of 4 aggregates. The second aggregate up to the 5th aggregates, they are the feeling, perception, formations, and consciousness. So these 4 aggregates are grouped under nama, mental phenomena. Rupa refers to the aggregates of materiality or the elements, rupa dhatu. So among these 2 phenomena, at the beginning of practice of mindfulness, physical phenomena are more conspicuous. In other words, it's easier to be perceived and be mindful than the mental phenomena. And every mental phenomenon consists of citta and cetasika. Meditators have to begin with a physical phenomenon which is more conspicuous. In other words, can be perceived and be mindful easily than any mental phenomenon. So rupa here in this discourse is rupa dhatu, consists of four primary material elements. As you know, the earth element, fire element, wind element, and water element. Among the four material elements, wind elements is manifested quite frequently during the practice of mindfulness in this method of mindfulness meditation. So during walking meditation, the movements of the foot, such as left and right, and then meditators increase the object, for example, to lifting, pushing, dropping, and so on. These are processor movements. In other words, they are the manifestations of the wind element. And when meditators are mindful of their daily routine activities, they shall be able to mindful of various processor movements, such as stretching of the arms, bending, lifting, and so on. So when meditators practicing sitting meditation, they may have to begin with one of the basic objects, that's movement abdomens. Movement here is wind element. Meditators cannot perceive the movements clearly, or sometimes they realize that the movements has stopped. Then the mindfulness will not stop there, and if there's no other distinct object, then they should be mindful of the sitting postures and two clear touching points. When meditators are mindful of the sitting postures or the standing postures during the practice of walking meditation, they should not visualize the form, they do not do the scanning of the body. The aim of mindful of the standing postures or sitting posture is to realize the specific characteristics of the wind element. In other words, meditators have to experience the nature of support, which is one of the specific characteristics of the wind element. But as long as mindfulness meditators have not yet attained purification of mind or citta visuddhi, which is the second stages of the purification, they will not be able to realize the specific characteristics of nama rupa clearly. So you have been listening to the talk given by Venerable Jamyal Sayadaw about the 7 stages of purifications. So meditators should not look for or search for the experience of the nature support or searching for the specific characteristics or the common characteristics of the mental and physical phenomena. Every mental phenomenon, every physical phenomenon has its own specific characteristics. And all mental and physical phenomena have 3 characteristics that are common to them. In the words, anicca, dukkha, anatta. Mindfulness meditators are not able to see them clearly because the mindfulness is not well developed and the concentration is not deep enough. So mindfulness meditators have to increase virya, mental effort gradually. So when meditators are able to increase virya gradually, eventually mindfulness also getting stronger, sharper. When meditators develop constant and continuous mindfulness for longer and longer period of time, then they will attain deeper and deeper concentration. So meditators have to attain khanika samadhi, vipassana samadhi, then they shall begin to gain some experiences of insight knowledge. And then it's important to follow the guideline of developing mindfulness closely. Meditators have to mindful of whatever object, either a mental object or physical object, which is arising at that present moment, and note it as it really occurs. If meditators did not perceive the object, then they could not mindful and note it. So when meditators could follow the instruction during the practice, then sooner or later they come to realize that when there's an object, then they can mindful and note it. If there's no object, then it's not possible to mindful and make mental noting. When meditators are able to develop attentive and precise mindfulness, then they shall realize the phenomena clearer and clearer. For example, meditators could perceive the movements of rising and falling clearer and clearer. When the mindfulness is not well developed, meditators will perceive there's an expansion of abdomen, then they will mindful and know it as rising. When they perceive there's a contractions of the abdomen, or when the abdomen moves inwards, then they can mindful and note it as falling. But when meditators are able to develop more and more attentive and precise mindfulness, then they shall be able to pay more and more attention to the movements itself. Similarly, when meditators are mindful of other process and movements during walking meditation and daily activities, when they could develop more and more attentive and precise mindfulness, then they shall perceive the movements clearer and clearer. So when meditators are able to realize the movement clearer, they will realize the specific characteristics of the wind element, in other words, movements as movements. When meditators can realize the specific characteristics of the wind element clearer and clearer, they may be able to perceive the consciousness clearer eventually. All kinds of rupa are material, but nama is immaterial. As long as meditators could not realize clearly the true natures of materiality, then they will not be able to see clearly the mental state, which is immaterial. If mindfulness meditators have not yet perceived the characteristics of materiality clearly, and then they try to mindful, for example, knowing mind, they cannot really see the knowing mind clearly, correctly. In fact, meditators also have to realize the true nature of the other two material elements clearly. They are the earth elements and the fire elements. So these three material elements, wind element, earth element, and fire element, are the objects of mindfulness meditation, vipassana meditation, which can perceive through contact. Contact here means potapa or passa. So when meditators are able to realize the specific characteristics of material elements clearly, for example, movements as movements, hot as hot, or cold as cold, hardness as hardness, then they shall begin to realize the consciousness which is arising depending on the material elements clearly. So, as you know, the fifth aggregates or the fifth elements is vijnana khanda. The aggregate consciousness are the eye consciousness or the ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, the body consciousness, and mind consciousness. Meditators could not perceive this consciousness clearly as long as mindfulness is not well developed and concentration is not deep enough. In other words, the consciousness is arising dependent on these four aggregates of the four elements. So meditators have to put forth effort to cultivate the mindfulness so that the mindfulness is getting stronger and stronger. So here mindfulness is a full attention. As long as meditators are not yet able to pay full attention to every phenomenon which is arising at that present moment, they have not yet attained deep concentration. In order to develop Khanika Samadhi, meditators have to train themselves to mindful and note every object from one moment to next moment. So here, mental noting or labeling is to help meditators to develop more and more attentive and precise mindfulness and energetic as well. But meditators should not be mindful of the mental noting. If meditators are mindful of mental noting, which is a concept, then meditators could not realize the ultimate reality or the Paramatha Dhamma clearly. So in other words, meditators have to train their mind in order to pay more and more attention to the Paramatha Dhamma, such as the movements, hot, cold, hardness, thinking, sleepiness, and so on. So meditators have to perceive the arising of an object clearly, then they make mental noting. If meditators can note it attentively, then the mindfulness will become stronger, able to perceive that object clearer. So as long as meditators have not yet attained momentary concentration or Khanika Samadhi, they may have to make mental noting whenever it's possible. So when meditators follow the guidelines of developing mindfulness clearly, then eventually they realize that there's a consciousness arising almost at the same moment with the arising of an object. In other words, there's this mental process of consciousness that knowing or cognizing, for example, a process of movements or a phenomenon of hot, hardness, and so on. When there's a clear painful sensation arising, then there's a process of consciousness cognizing or knowing that pain. So here, consciousness is one of the ultimate realities, one of Paramatha Dhamma. That means the consciousness only knows or cognizes movements as movements. Only when meditators have attained Khanika Samadhi, in other words, the mindfulness is very sharp and concentration is deep enough, then meditators begins to see the Paramatha Dhamma. This word consciousness sometimes is also used in what called conventional proof or as a conventional language. For example, sometimes we say that when mindfulness meditators become conscious of the foot is moving, such as there's a lifting movements, then they should mindful and not lifting. So here, when we say become conscious of the foot is lifted up, doesn't mean consciousness in the sense of Paramatha Dhamma. When the teacher said that you should pay more attention, focus your attention on the object. So the attention is just what called conventional expressions. But sometimes those who have a knowledge of Abhidhamma might think this attention is manasikara in the Abhidhamma. If meditators really have the manasikara, one of cetasika in the Abhidhamma, at the time they only realize ultimate realities. Paramatha Dhamma. The most important, meditators must be mindful and note every object as it duly occurs. They have to put aside the knowledge they have gained through learning the Sutta Pitaka and Abhidhamma Pitaka. So when meditators have gained momentary concentration, they will realize that the arising of consciousness is dependent on an object. The object can be one of the elements, or one of the feeling or sensations, or perceptions, or one of the factors from mental formation, sankhara. But meditators should not think about the theory. For example, if this object belongs to the aggregates of perceptions or the aggregates of formations and so on. So meditators realize that the consciousness, vijnana, arises dependent on the object or phenomenon. So meditators realize the relationship between the consciousness or the noting mind and the object or the phenomenon. So we come back to this teaching. The form element is the home of consciousness. So one whose consciousness is shaka by lust for the form element is called one who roams about in a home. So when meditators realize the relationship between the consciousness and these four elements, then they will understand the meaning of these teachings. So do you understand the meaning of this teaching? So here, one whose consciousness is shaka by lust for the form element, or shaka by lust for the feeling elements, perception elements, and the volition elements, is called one who roams about in a home. So in other words, as long as one is shaka by lust, raga, lust is also robha. So when there's raga, then one will take birth again and again in this ocean of samsara. So the consciousness here refers to karmic consciousness, or karma vijnana in Pali. Isn't it? One who understands the teaching will say that it is a consciousness that will be wandering in this samsara. But one should not have the wrong view, micchaditi, thinking that the consciousness is a permanent process, everlasting. Those who do not have the right understanding might think that when a person has passed away, the consciousness will leave the body and then will be born in another body again. Those who do not have the right understanding, then they may use a simile, comparing this old body like an old home. When the old home is dilapidated, not suitable for staying anymore, then one has to leave. Similarly, the consciousness has to leave the old body, which is not suitable to live anymore. So there's no single process of consciousness or single process of mindfulness that has been mindful and perceive various phenomena or objects of meditations. So the worldlings always cling to these aggregates or these elements. Isn't it? The mind always longing for pleasant feelings. So that feeling is the home of the consciousness. Rupa, the body, is a home of consciousness because consciousness wishes to see that the rupa is always beautiful, handsome, and so on. So one has to perform various actions in order to sustain the pleasant feeling, in order to keep this body healthy, beautiful, handsome. So those worldlings who do not have the right understanding might think that my body wants to enjoy present feeling, present touch, and so on. So do you think that is the body wants to enjoy present feeling, present touch, and so on? I want to enjoy present taste, and so on. So do you think is the body or the person that wants to enjoy present touch, or the person wants his body or her body to enjoy present contact, present feeling? If you think that is a person or an I wants to enjoy this present touch, present feeling, actually you are holding to a view of self, I, DT. Those who have some understanding of Dharma might say that it is my mind or consciousness wants to feel present touch, want to enjoy present feeling. This thinking is also DT, my mind, my consciousness. If they feel proud about their beautiful body, handsome body, healthy body, this is called conceit of mana. If there's a craving, want to put forth more effort, time, and money, so that one will look very beautiful, wearing beautiful clothes and so on, this can become tanha, craving. All the worldlings have a home. Their consciousness have a home. So when you have this home, then you may think you feel safe. So do you wish to roam about homeless? If there's homeless, then you do not have a body. Those who do not have the right understanding of Dharma, they might think the consciousness is staying inside the body. Is the consciousness really staying inside the body? So then this discourse explained further. And how householder, or they refer to householder Haliddakani, does one roam about homeless? Here the discourse used many words. All these words related to raga. The discourse said that the desire, or desire means a chanda, lust, raga, delight, nandi, and craving, tanha, engagement, upaya, and clinging, upadana. Then the mental standpoints, adherences, and underlying tendency regarding the form element, these have been abandoned by the Tathagata. Have been abandoned by Tathagata, cut off at the roots. That means the roots also removed completely, make like a palm stem, obliterated, so that they are no more subject to future arising. Therefore, the Tathagata is called one who roams about homeless. So, in other words, as long as one have not enlightened, there's these defilements lying in the mind, and this is called anusaya, underlying tendency. Mental standpoints means that as if you can always fix your attention there. So just like those always pay attention to the body, they may spend a lot of time doing physical exercise to keep the body healthy. They take healthy food and so on. So they have a lot of attention on their body. Some you fix their attention on their feelings. They wish that they have good feelings all the time. Here, adherences is quite similar to clinging to it. So all these sanda, raga, nandi, tanha, or upaya, upadana, and so on, lying deep inside your mind is known as underlying tendency, anusaya. So similarly, one, the desire, lust, delight, craving, engagement and clinging, the mental standpoint, adherences, and the underlying tendency regarding the feeling element, perception element, volitional elements, and the conscious elements. These have been abandoned by the Tathagata. So here, consciousness element is mentioned in this part of the teaching. You have raga for your consciousness. Do you think you can attain enlightenment? So the first part of the teaching refers to the karmic consciousness, karma vijnana. So if one aspires to attain the highest stage enlightenments, then one has to uproot all the mental defilements regarding these 5 elements or 5 aggregates. So if one has not removed, for example, last raga or clinging to the consciousness, for example, I want my consciousness be calm, be peaceful all the time, then that clinging is defilements, that raga is defilements. If these defilements are not uprooted, then it's not possible to attain enlightenment. So in the first part of teaching, the form elements is a home consciousness, the feeling elements is the home consciousness, and so on. So this part also refers to the cause and effect, or karma and its results. In other words, when meditators are able to realize conditionality, in other words, the consciousness or the awareness is arising dependent on the phenomenon or an object, then meditators also come to realize about cause and effect. So when one realizes cause effect, in other words, one realizes karma and its results. If one commits unwholesome action, akusala karma, then one will experience painful results. If one does a wholesome karma, then one will experience pleasant results. But as long as all kinds of underlying tendency, such as raga, lust, craving, tanha, and so on, are not yet uprooted, then this karma shall become the cause of rebirth again. So that's why this consciousness, known as karmic consciousness, karma vijnana. So because of karma, after passing away of this consciousness, causes the arising of another consciousness. So in other words, in the last moment of life, the consciousness passed away. So what will happen when the consciousness had passed away in the last moment of life? So when the consciousness had passed away, as long as a person has not yet attained the highest stage of enlightenment, then they will be arising another consciousness in the next existence. Then we say that there's a beginning of another life. So where one will take birth, what's the destiny, will depend on the karma which is happening in the last moment of life. And the other factor is a craving for becoming or lust for existence. Because of this lust for existence, then they will be arising of another life. So the purpose of practicing mindfulness meditation is to remove all kinds of underlying tendency, anusaya. In order to remove the underlying tendency, anusaya, mindfulness meditators have to attain all the 4 stages of supramundane path, Magayana. So we shall explain the next part of teaching in the next talk. So I wish all mindfulness meditators will understand correctly right way of practicing mindfulness meditation, taking one's own 5 aggregates or 5 elements in this discourse as an object of mindfulness, as an object of vipassana, in words of object that enable you to develop supramundane wisdoms, and finally realizing your ultimate goal soon.
สาธุ สาธุ สาธุ